Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. This is Dr. Soul Brother here, again with a remedy to help cure you of your ills. I'm not going to be long, but I want to get to the point here. Something has been kind of getting on my nerves a little bit, and it's surrounding the racial identity of uh, Vice President Kamala Harris. Yes, I'm bringing this up again because this is really bugging me for a whole bunch of reasons. I'm not here to go into her politics about her running for the presidency of the United States. That's not what this is about. That's a whole nother subject matter. What I'm talking about is her racial identity. And one of the things that bothers me is that we as black folks sometimes we act like we're unaware or not familiar with certain things. Example, you know as well as I do that there are black folk in the family who look like Kamala Harris. In other words, they're of that order, whether they have two black parents or whether they are mixed parentage. It doesn't matter. You're aware of the people, not just people in your family, but also folk in the community, people you grew up with, people you went to high school with, people you went to college with, people you work with, etc. Um, and so, but I want to address in talking about her identity. I want to address the identity of her father. Because I notice in recent times, more so now than say, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago, some of y'all referring to him as Indian from Jamaica. And there seems to be a lot of confusion, um, with all this. Well, let me back up. It's clear that with all this brouhaha surrounding um, Vice President Kamala Harris, that it is exposed in more on so many levels uh, the confusion regarding a nationality, an ethnicity, and a racial identity. And it has also exposed some real ugliness regarding the outlook of people who are of a lighter hue. So I'm going to use that as a segue into a man by the name of Dr. Donald Jasper Harris, her father, who is still in the land of the living. And I'm going to get to that later on in my talk. Born in 1938 in St. Anne, Jamaica. Um, and his background, first of all, if anybody has read Vice President Kamala Harris's memoirs that was published in 2019, which I'm discovering more and more with each passing day, that there are some of y'all out there who not only have not read her book, which is bad enough, you really don't care about reading her book because once you read her book, I could go into other areas, but once you read her book, the book alone would debunk a lot of this mythological bull crap that's out here. But see, you don't want to read her book, and you don't care about the correct information regarding her racial identity because you have an emotional investment in this. So what you've done, you've now made this thing personal. You're not going into her politics, her policies, etc. You're making this thing personal. And then we know that her mother, um, her mother passed away some time ago, and that she was from India. But her father is a Jamaican, and he is a black man from Jamaica. Let's be clear. I mean, some of you act like, look, Jamaica is a majority black populated society. Majority populated. It's not exclusively black, but it's majority black folk of African descent. Well, there are white Jamaicans, there are Indian Jamaicans, there are Chinese Jamaicans, there are Syrian Jamaicans, etc. And of course, there are black Jamaicans. Well, Dr. Donald Jasper Harris is one of those black Jamaicans. A very light skinned black man, to be sure, but a black man nevertheless. Let's go into his background for a moment for those of you who need a little brief education. Um, his father was Oscar Joseph Brown Harris, and he was born April 5th, 1914, in a place called Orange Hill, St. Anne Parish, Jamaica. He was the husband of Beryl Finnegan, if I'm pronouncing the maiden name correct, Finnegan Harris, who was born 1921 in St. Anne. Now, a woman by the name of, and forgive me if I'm mispronouncing names, I don't mean to do that, but I believe it's Christiana Brown, aka Miss Chrissy. Um, and that um, was a descendant of Hamilton Brown, who was on record as being a plantation and slave, being as a plantation and slave owner, and founder of Brownstown, which is the part of uh, St. Anne where uh, Dr. Donald Harris is from. So you get an idea of his background and where the now if you look at Oscar, look at a photograph of Oscar Brown Harris, the father of Dr. Donald Jasper Harris. He's very, very light skinned. Donald Harris's mother, Beryl, Beyl, which is a common name in the Caribbean for women, from what I understand. She's dark skinned. If you open up the book, uh, Kamala Harris's Vice President Kamala Harris's memoirs, you'll see a photograph with she and her grandmother. And looking at the photograph, looking at her hairstyle and whatnot, this looked like it was taken sometime in the 1980s. Um, it could have been while she was a student at Howard University visiting, or when she finished Howard and was in law school. I don't know. Only she can answer that. But here's the point: it's clear this is a black woman that you're looking at, a dark-skinned black woman. So when you look at Vice President Harris, her light complexion is something that she inherited from her father, similarly, her father inherited his light skin from his father. So um, now I don't know if there is any East Indian in his background. Only they can answer those kind of things. I don't know. I don't know anything. I don't know any of these folk. But my point is that you mean to tell me that you, talking to you, Black America, you can't look at him, her father, and see this is a black man? First of all, he has woolly hair. Now, he lost a lot of his hair these days as an older person, but if you look at young photographs of him, you mean to tell me that you cannot look at him and see that's a light skinned black man? You got to be kidding me. Huh? This is beyond ridiculous. Well, you know as well as I that right here in these United States, in our community, in our families, there are people who fit the profile of a Donald Harris. So don't sit up and act like, um, well, that's not a black man. That's an Indian. Or this is the other thing. Um, how do you get it confused about nationality? How does nationality trump race? How? Please explain that to me. When you say somebody is Jamaican, that's not telling us much. Because again, even though black folk are in the majority, they're just that, the majority. It's not exclusively black. It's like somebody saying, well, I'm an American. Again, that's not telling us much. What kind of an American? You have to make those kind of distinctions. You know that in places like Guyana, you have what's called uh, Afro Guyanese people and Indo Guyanese people. Indo meaning for Indian, and Afro meaning black folk of African descent. Let me move on. If you look at his grandmother, Donald Harris's grandmother, Christiana Brown, Miss aka Miss Christie, just Google her and you'll see what I'm talking about. And you can clearly see this is a black woman. So some of y'all got this really twisted up, but let me continue. Um, this man leaves Jamaica. Well, first of all, before he leaves Jamaica, he goes to school. He's very bright in terms of his academics and whatnot. And it's clear that uh, Vice President Kamala Harris came from two parents who were very who did well academically and were highly intelligent. Um, Donald Harris came from Jamaica to pursue. Well, let me jumping all over the place. He pursued his undergraduate studies, economics, at University of West Indies. And while there, now this is interesting. While there, I believe he was there from 1956 to 1960. While as an undergraduate student, he was um, president of the Economic Society, as well as president of the uh, debating society. So he was part of a debate club, debate team. What's significant about that is, without jumping ahead too far, Vice President Harris, as an undergraduate student at Howard University, was a part of the economics club because remember, she studied political science and economics. And she was also involved in the debate team at Howard. So clearly, um, she has some of her father's traits, in terms of public speaking, etc. Well, after earning his degree, his undergraduate degree at University of West Indies in Jamaica, he comes to the United States, enrolls in the doctoral program in economics at UC Berkeley, which is where he meets her mother, Miss Shamala Gopalan, who came from India to do doctoral work in endocrinology. I believe that's how that's pronounced. This is no joke. This is some serious stuff. They meet there, um, become romantically involved, get married. They're involved in the civil rights movement there. So this is the kind of background that Vice President Kamala Harris comes from. So she got it the honest way. But while there, um, both Donald Harris and Miss uh, Gopalan, Shamala Gopalan, get involved with an organization that was called the Afro American Association, founded in 1962 by a group of graduate and law students at UC Berkeley. And the central mission was to educate Black Americans about their history. Now, let me pause for a second. Even though uh, Kamala's mother was not a Black woman, she was a brown woman from India, she gravitated towards the Black community. In fact, a lot of her friends were Black. And so she was clearly sensitive to Black culture and all the rest of it. Now, one could argue maybe it had something to do with her background in India. Who knows? But she gravitated towards Black folks here in the United States, which ended up being a positive thing because when Vice President Kamala Harris and her sister Maya were growing up, her mother was largely responsible for the shaping of their Black identity. I know that makes some of your Earl and all of that. Well, you're going to have to deal with it. And that's not a negative, that's a positive thing, contrary to what you might think. And if you think it's negative, then something's clearly wrong with you. But let me move on. Um, One of the significant things about the Afro American Association, it was founded by the uh, graduate and law students in Berkeley. They had a chapter in Oakland at Oakland City College that later became Merritt College. And two people were members of that organization at Oakland City College that later became Merritt College. And that was Bobby Seale and Huey Newton. Yes, the two men who would later found the Black Panther Party in Oakland in 1966. So you get a sense of the type of organization it was. And they proudly call themselves the Afro American Association. Let's understand this. We were embracing our Afro American identity, something that some of you seem to give pushback to for all the wrong reasons. And the founding members were Donald Hopkins, Ortho Green, Henry Ramsey, and a brother named Donald Warden, who later became known by his Muslim name, Dr. Khalid Al Mansour. Okay. Well, um, this is the thing. I want to get this clear here. Later on, in 1965 when Malcolm X was assassinated, um, Donald Harris wrote a very good piece. In fact, it was an excellent piece called Malcolm X, The Man and His Mission. This was published as a two-part article for the Jamaica Gleaner newspaper. Now, mind you, he was still here in the United States, but he submitted it to the Gleaner. And this was published shortly before the release of the autobiography of Malcolm X. And one of the things that Donald Harris says in it, in the piece is Malcolm X, Malcolm was no ordinary Muslim, no ordinary Muslim convert. He brought with him into the movement not only an awareness of personal hardship and injustice, but also a passion to convert others, a determination to change the environment of his people, a sharp analytical mind, and the consummate skill at a public speaker, at, of a public speaker and debater. That's Donald Harris. That's Kamala Harris's father. What he wrote about Malcolm X, El Hajj Malik El Shabazz in 1965, shortly after his public assassination. Um, but I also wanted to point this out. Later on, the parents get divorced and all that, and of course, Kamala Harris and her sister Maya were raised by their mother uh, in the black community there in the Bay Area. But by 1978, there's a book written by Donald Harris. I believe it might be out of print these days. It's hard to find. Called Capital Accumulation and Income Distribution. That was published in 1978 by the Stanford University Press. Because Stanford is where uh, Donald Harris taught economics. And interestingly, he dedicates the book. This is 1978. He dedicates the book to Kamala and Maya. In fact, it says dedicated to Kamala and Maya. Well, the thing is this. I wanted to lay that out for several reasons. Um, it's clear, it should be clear, that her father is a black man. This whole stupid notion that somehow you being from Jamaica doesn't make you black is insane. Insane, whether it's folk over here on the American side talking that or folks from over there talking it. We recently saw the piece where one of the older cousins was saying something about um, the mother being Indian and the father being Jamaican. Well, here's the problem I had with that. Brother Man did not emphasize or stress the point that her father, Donald Harris, is a black man. That is a problem. And I'm going to tell you something else that's a problem, frankly. We have not heard from Dr. Donald Harris. And so Dr. Soul Brother wants to put a call out to Dr. Donald Harris. And I say this respectfully. Professor Harris, if you are out there in the clouds, it is incumbent upon you to set the record straight about your racial identity and, by extension, your daughter's racial identity. That is essential because I fundamentally believe that if Dr. Donald Harris were to speak up, he spoke up 5 years ago about something else that was controversial, but if he were to speak up right now, he would help to put to rest this notion about his daughter not being black and about he himself not being a black man. Because again, this notion that yeah he's from Jamaica, but he's an Indian, he would set that straight. But for those of you who got blurred vision, nobody on this planet outside of black folks, outside of the black race, have woolly hair. Let me repeat that. Nobody outside of this any other group on this planet has woolly hair, other than black folk of African descent. Okay, so I'm saying that to say when you look at Dr. Donald Harris, you look at his face and you look at his hair, it should be clear that this is a black man who is of a lighter hue. And we have enough people in our community, in our families, etc., who fit the profile of a Dr. Donald Harris. So I'm going to end this and make it clear as best I can that this whole division as it relates to skin tone, geography, it needs to end because this is how everybody else is yards ahead of us, and we're still in the starting blocks. We ain't left the starting blocks yet, and that's an issue. So, put this whole notion to rest that Kamala Harris is not black. Yes, we understand that um, she's of mixed parentage. Yeah, she's of mixed parentage, but identifies as black. In fact, her mother, I told y'all before, her mother helped shape their black identity or identities, Kamala and Maya. So, and we got to salute her for that. I know I do. And again, if you give pushback to that and you have a problem with that, then you clearly have a problem. And I have to question, are you a victim of a lobotomy? That's my question. Are you a victim of lobotomy? Because something is fundamentally wrong in your psyche. Fundamentally. Fundamentally. So again, Dr. Donald Harris, please come forward and speak up now. You have a moral obligation, sir, to speak up and put things to rest against all of this madness. So with that, Dr. Soul Brothers is going to end it. Um, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, hit the comment. Keep the comments simple. Don't talk out of pocket because I will block you. Make no mistake about that. I have no problem doing it. So I'm going to end things now. And until the next time, God bless.